Hey, this is Amir Anzur. I'm speaking with Eetu Kuneinen, who is the co-founder of fintechs.fi. And essentially, the topic today is how to get rich. So Eetu, that's what everyone wants to know is how to get rich. What are your thoughts on this topic?
I don't know. Once you get rich, why don't you tell me? No, yeah, it's an interesting one because everyone wants to be rich, and no one really has cracked a formula how to get rich, or have they? I don't know. There are certainly things that I mean we can list traits that successful people have in common, and we can try to obviously figure out it like scientific way to list traits and see if there are any things that they share. But is it even still, is it something that we can, is it something that we can break down and crack into a code? I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I have a couple of theories, right? Like if you create value in the world, so somehow you help people, you help the world, you will create value, but it's not always fair, right? You could create a lot of value. Like for instance, you could be a school principal, right? Mm-hmm. And you're helping a lot of people and you're leading a team of, let's say 400 kids and the teachers, but you might not, your salary might only be $50,000 a year, right? On the other hand, you could be a junior analyst working for Goldman Sachs and churning out reports that have been done for decades and changing things and fonts slightly, and you could be on $500,000 a year, right? But there is some element of value creation, right? So like if you can help the world in some way, you will create wealth. There's some element of being unique. So the reason that Warren Buffett is one of the richest people, I think it's because he's created a brand for himself. And so more investors go invest in his fund, right? And more CEOs want to work for him, right? So like there's an element of brand creation. This is what I teach is, you know, creating personal brands, because that helps you create wealth, and not just personal brands, but business brands. So there's a lot of wealth being created in America because it's easy to trademark and copyright brands. And so like when someone starts a McDonald's or a Subway's, they create these systems that their brand allows them to make money. Michael Jordan in 2019, which was something like 16 years after he last played basketball, made $120 million from Nike, right? So like these guys are creating wealth. Now, what I do know about wealth creation is that it's easier to create wealth in America than it is, for instance, in Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, you can be locally rich. You can make $10,000 a year and be like considered a rich guy. But in America, it's easier to create a lot of wealth than in let's say, as I said, Afghanistan or Somalia. And that's why immigrants go to America. Now, then we have to dissect why is it easier in America. One is part of their culture is to create wealth, right? So for instance, even if you become a billionaire, there's Forbes magazine telling you that you're number 422 on the Forbes list and that you're not really someone that special. So you still in a fight. Whereas a lot of people in a country like Pakistan, for instance, they create a few $1 million and they're like, I'm set for life. I'm going to take it easy now, right? I have a nice car. I have a nice house. I have all this. Then there's this thing that wealth is relative, right? So we say Elon Musk is the richest guy in the world. But, you know, if he sold all his stake in Tesla and all his stake in SpaceX, the stock market, the price would just crash. So he's not really worth 200 billion, because if he sold all his shares in all of these companies, people would like the value would just really plummet in his net worth. But America, because he moved to America, if Elon Musk had stayed in South Africa, he would not now be the richest guy in the world, because he's moved to tech central place in the world which is San Francisco, which has a lot of investors and media and PR. He's become that richest guy in the world, right? So there's a reason. So, I used to think that, especially as an internet entrepreneur, that you could move to Kabul and become the richest guy in the world. But now I don't believe that, because I think you still need to meet people face to face. So like, although Warren Buffett is in the middle of nowhere in Omaha, Nebraska, he does travel quite a bit to New York, I'm sure, and other places, and he's in America and able to create wealth. And then I just believe that the American society, they teach you about branding from a young age. So for instance, now I live in London. Most schools in London have a school uniform, right? So kids, they will go and wear a school uniform so they look all the same. Whereas most kids in America, they don't have a school uniform, right? So I went to an American school and I would have to choose my own clothes, which means that I'm choosing to wear Armani or Gucci or whatever that brand is to make myself appeal wealthy or cool. And so Americans learn that at a younger age, right? How to create brands. Whereas in countries like Pakistan and UK, they're told, wear a uniform so you don't have to think. So creating value. And then the thing is, if you want to get rich, for me, you have to study it, right? Like, as you said a nice thing in one of our podcasts, it's like, I said, why did you create fintechs.fi? You said, if you want to create a product, if you want to get knowledgeable about a topic, create a company around it, right? So
and create a news site around it.
A news site around it, which now you've done 4,000 articles on fintechs.fi, and you've learned a lot. So what I think is, like, every skill is learnable, right? So if people are listening, it's not that Eetu and Amir might have the answer, but at least we are helping and we're discussing this topic, right? In schools, it's not really discussed, right? It's how to create wealth, right? You're told to do mathematics, but biology, chemistry, etc. But there should be a topic, wealthology. That's why I wrote my book, Wealthology, is like, to start teaching people about what it takes to create wealth. And now, you could be a pianist and be super great at playing the piano, and that your wealth comes from just being happy playing the piano, right? And you might not be at that level that you're getting paid, but you love playing the piano, but you don't create wealth necessarily, right? Unless you're the best pianist, people pay for your records and people pay for your thing. But you could spend just as much effort trying to create wealth, right? Like, a lot of people in the US, especially now, because I follow a lot of social media from the US, because I'm like, these guys create wealth, so I want to learn about it. And so I see a lot of podcasters and people talking about property, right? So in the US, it's a lot easier to buy real estate because there's credit. People can take, they can take a loan out from a bank. They can take a loan out, and a property, they might buy it $1 million, and then 10 years later it's worth 1.5 million, right? And so they create wealth from property. Then they create wealth from stock exchange, right? Trading stocks and shares and bonds. And so they learn about which they invest their money, which helps the companies and also helps them create wealth. They create wealth from their profession. So a good dentist, for instance, will earn over $200,000-$300,000 in the US, whereas in a country like Pakistan, they might only earn like $20,000, right? So
let me comment on that, because I think there's a big fundamental thing there that a lot of people don't think. Because let's say that you earn $200,000 in the US, but your expenses are $200,000, which means that at the end of the year, you're at zero. Whereas
yes.
Like, even if you make $1,000 in another place, but you can save even $100 from that every month. So at the end of the year, your net is positive.
You're right, but what is wealth, right? Like, is wealth the savings that you have?
Well, that's so while you were talking, I wrote a couple points down that I wanted to discuss. So number one is you mentioned something really important. You said value. So I think it's very important that we define what is value. So let's come back to that. The second thing is that there's this exactly same thing that I just mentioned, because I actually have an example to it. So I was living and working in Finland, earning straight out of university salary. I mean, pretty okay job in a large corporation, and the salary was something like what I made was like 2,000 euro a month at that time, which in baht would have been something like almost 100,000 baht.
Always explain in dollars. So we US dollars.
Right. No, I'm converting to baht, but that would be something like $3,000.
Yeah.
So $3,000, 2,000 euro at that time, and something like 100,000 baht. The importance is baht, because when I moved to work in Thailand, my first salary was 40,000 baht. So I took 60% off from my salary back home. I took a salary cut, but at the end of the month, I was actually saving more money. And I was living in a dream city in Bangkok. I was having a great time, at the young age of 20 some, so that to me was value. So instead of being in a cold country, earning more money technically, but at the end of the month would have saved less and in more miserable conditions. So to me, that was wealth. To me, I was rich. To me, that was like a dream come true. I wanted to be there. I wanted to make that happen. Obviously, then you get where you want to be. Now suddenly that's not enough anymore. So the question is how to get rich. Are you ever rich? If today you have $10 million, today you dream you have $10 million, then tomorrow you have $10 million, then you look at, well, this guy has $100 million. Now I want to have $100 million. Then you have $100 million. You're like, well, that guy has $200 million. I want to have $200 million. So what does it mean to be rich? So does it mean to have a certain amount of money, or is it more of a mindset? Because if it's more of a mindset, then we all can be rich. And we can all behave like we're rich, and we can all be treated that we are rich because we behave like we're rich. Therefore, we are treated better way. Therefore, certain doors open. So I don't know if it's more of a doing things in a certain way or doing certain things. Do you know what I mean? Because I feel like it's like a template. Like if you apply that template to anything, if you look at successful people, they just have a certain way of doing things. Anything they touch suddenly turn into gold.
Yeah, and I was reminded a few months ago, I bought the new Samsung Galaxy S23 Ultra, which just came out in February, I believe. And right. It was 1,500 pounds, about $2,000. And I was like, yes, I got the new phone on the release date. And then a week later, someone snatched my phone. So I was on my phone, and then two guys came and just grabbed my phone and ran. And I was like, oh my God. At first I chased after them, and then I was like, what am I doing? Because they ran and I was chasing after them. Like, what am I going to do? Like, even if I catch them, I don't, it's not worth my life, the phone. Right. But then at the same time, I was buying a property in London. And I was like, actually, I would give up like $1 million property that I was buying for that phone. To right. me, the phone is worth more than a house, right? Because like property, like what am I gonna, my life without a phone is like really like, a phone allows me to create wealth. And so I have a lot of friends that work on Wall Street and in Manhattan, and they live in a small space. Even me in London, I live in a relatively small space for what I could get in a village, even in the UK in a village, or in a developing country like Philippines or Pakistan or India. Like, yeah. But I give up that quality. Like for me, it's important to be with people, right? So each one of us will define our own vision of wealth. Like I gave up a career. I was working at Accenture, which within like my graduate, I joined as a graduate, you know, at the age of 21, earning probably about $45,000 as a starting salary, or $50,000. And then but then within 10 to 15 years, when you become a partner, you're guaranteed to become a millionaire, right? It was called Arthur Anderson at the time. It was like a partnership. So you guaranteed, but within a year of joining, I was miserable in my corporate job. And I gave up a big salary and big equity. And I couldn't explain this to a lot of people, because I was like, I would rather be a broke entrepreneur hustling away and living on like ramen noodle and apples, just so I could sort of do my own thing, than be paid like multiple $100,000 salary to do this. So what, to me, a wealth is, becoming rich is having richness of time, right? Because I can't stand having a corporate tell me what I can and cannot do. But that's my personality, right? Over time. And but I would rather, yes, I would rather be an entrepreneur or do my own thing. Not every venture is fun, but do my own and have my intellectual freedom and be earning $100,000 than be stuck in a job that I hate and be earning $1 million, right? So there's a number somewhere. And some people will give up that job because they, like a lot of my friends now, we're in our mid 40s. So we've got kids, we've got school, private school, all these other responsibilities to go through. But some of my friends say, hey, I would rather take a lower paying job, send my kids to public school and not have to do that. So I think you're right. Like the question is, what is rich? Because some people feel broke with a $500,000 salary, and some people feel wealthy because I started a lot of entrepreneurs in developing countries. They feel wealthy with a $200 salary, right? So yeah.
So the point here is that I've been with my wife, we've been discussing about this forever. When I got a good paying salary, a good paying job with perks that were beyond my means, we actually didn't upgrade anything. And I said to my wife, she said, no, we should upgrade. I said, no, we shouldn't, because you know how horrible it is to downgrade. If we upgrade from, I mean, this is the level, are you comfortable at this level? And she said, yes. So I said, why should we upgrade then? She said, you're right. Actually, we should just maintain this level. And that's what we've done ever since.
This is one, like I went to a rich business school in Switzerland, IMD business school. It's in Lausanne, Switzerland, to do my MBA. And I remember one of the professors had made a lot of money. He'd worked for Hewlett Packard, HP, and then like sold his shares and retired and all these things. But then he came and became a professor. So I said to him, can you do a lecture on creating wealth, right, as an extra lecture? And so he did one. And one of the things he recommended, he was like, look, when you start to move up in your career, you'll start to make more money, but don't, make sure your lifestyle does not increase with the same rate. But so instead of going from 1 bedroom to a 2-bedroom and a 3-bedroom house, when you are making more money, stay in that 1 bedroom a bit longer, don't upgrade your car for a bit longer, and then you will create wealth. Now, with my partner, I had to sort of, like, I make money, but I use that money to hire people, right? Like I hire people in Pakistan. I have teams all over the world. And her thing was, let's buy a nicer car when you make this money, and get a nicer house. And I'm like, look, that's a liability, right? And Robert Kiyosaki and Rich Dad Poor Dad is one of the classic books, and I even interviewed one of her co-authors and on my podcast, Sharon Lecter. But she, like, basically what they're saying is, understand the difference between an asset and a liability, right? Like people buy expensive watches, right? Mm-hmm. But some people use it as an investment, because you buy a watch, it could be worth more But it's just a fashion statement, right? So I hate having expensive watches because I'm always in fear of losing them, and it's happened to me because every watch that I've had that's been a nice watch, someone has stolen, or it's gotten like
Well, I
I've
think you're
lost.
supposed to wear them. You're just supposed to buy them, but never wear them. They're
Yeah,
like jewelry.
exactly. And then I'm like, you know, I had a very expensive Rolex that was gifted to me, and basically I kept it in a safe, but I left the safe open once, and one of the maids or someone took it. And then I was like, man, like I hardly wore that watch 3 times. And also I hated wearing an expensive watch because I didn't want to show people like this thing. So
I
now
know.
I don't
I
wear a
know.
watch, or if I do,
Eh,
it's a digital watch, which basically, you know, measures your steps and all these other
yeah.
perks that
Yeah,
you have.
smart.
Because,
Yeah,
you know,
smart watch.
and then this is the other thing that I've learned. You know, I've lived in Pakistan, Switzerland, UK, US, UAE, different places, right? Just as you have. And an average Pakistani makes $1,500 a year. Average person in the world makes $12,000 a year. Average UK person makes $43,000 a year. Average American makes $73,000 a year. And then average Swiss makes $96,000 a year. And what I learned is, you know, in Switzerland, a haircut would cost me like $40, right?
Sure.
And
Sure.
Pakistan, I could get a haircut for less than $1. And it's
Yep.
not like the Swiss barber is making me look 40 times better.
But this is exactly the point from what's his name, Taleb. I think that would be the second book, which is the Black Swan. So he's talking about, is it better to be a lower class, a lower rich class guy living in an upper middle class society because he has now money, so he looks richer, than living in a super high class society with a little bit less money than everyone else. So like psychologically, you're always feeling like you're lesser than everyone else because you have less money than them. And if you live in an upper middle class society, okay, so you belong to a different society, but at least you're respected because your wealth is above everyone else's.
And this happened to me in my youth, right? I came from a rich family from my in Pakistan. But when I went to you know, so I was in the elite of Pakistan, like the top tier, nice house, car, driver, servant, everything. But then when I moved to a school in Brussels, in Belgium, when I was 8 years old, the school fees was $50,000 a year, and I was one of the poor kids in a rich kid school. So I would go to Brussels and feel like the poor kid, and then I would go to Pakistan and feel like the rich kid. And so it just, but you're right, it gave me a little bit of a complex because I was like, damn, I'm the poor kid because I live in the smaller house, whereas my friend has an elevator in his house. And like, you know, like people would have like these lavish places, and I would be embarrassed to call my friends over because I had a normal house, you know? And so that's an interesting question, because if you are in Manhattan and earning, you know, $200,000 or $300,000, you feel poor. Whereas if you're in Pakistan and you're earning $20,000, you can feel rich. And then you can always upgrade your friends, you know, and there's this expression that says you earn the average of the 5 people that you hang around, right? So if the 5 closest friends around you earn $100,000, you will earn between $80,000 and $120,000.
Sure,
right?
sure. That's always
time,
yes, that's normal.
You work at it. So this is one of the things that I've learned about creating wealth is I actively search clients and people to work with that I think create wealth, right? Like, look, there's nothing wrong with hanging out with the cleaner or the maid or the electrician or the plumber or whatever, but like also think about networking and getting to know rich people, right? So one of the great things for me from working at Accenture, which was my first corporate day job, is now that I'm 46, a lot of my peers, the ones that I started in my group, I started with 60 people in London. A lot of them are CEOs of multi-billion-dollar companies. And I'm like, wow, like, and I can call them up and all these things. So like you create that network. And then I always actively try to create networks, right? So I have, for my business school in Switzerland, I created a WhatsApp group and got everyone in that thing. So that would be the rich network. Same with people from my school, same with people from my Accenture. So I'm always looking to create those networks because it like money is a number in a database, right? And one of the best books I read for a few years has been Sapiens by Yuval Harari. And basically what he's saying is capitalism is just a made up game, right? It's a number, we've just make it up, right? So we've made up this game called money, right? Because like if an alien came, he wouldn't know that you having $2 million in your bank account is better than having $20 in your bank account, because that's just a number in a database, right?
No, it's just basically laziness meets intelligence. That's exactly what the economic system is, because I have a way to extract value from the system, so therefore I create it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
What do you mean laziness?
Banks can issue after issue after issue. You know, I can sell you a loan on which I can then create another derivative and sell it as an investment, so-called investment product. In other words, a gambling product.
What does the term derivatives mean?
So I have something that has value. So basically, second mortgage would be a derivative of the first mortgage.
Oh, okay. So when you say, what would you call a mortgage? That's a product, and then
yeah, I mean that would be backed with real value.
So what do you call that? What do you call?
I have a house.
Yeah.
So I have a house, and I come to you as the banker and say, hey, I want to buy this house. I have this much money, and I need your money this much, so I can get it, and then I'll pay you back over the next 10 years.
Yeah.
And if I don't pay back, then the bank can come and say, okay, give me the house. And so the bank actually has guarantee. But now, because bank has this asset, because you've taken a loan from the bank, so technically the house now belongs to the bank. But the bank has already committed with you that you have a payment plan. So the house technically is yours as long as you keep paying. But from the bank's point of view, they now have a house against which they can issue another loan. Or they can get another loan against this, so they can get more money, which they then invest in somewhere else.
And that's what
becomes a derivative. And then, I mean, basically, the derivative, it can be anything. I mean, if I believe that some market is going to go down, I can go to a bank and say, hey, can you issue me a product that hedges against this? So I basically play against the market. So if the market crashes, I make money because I have the certain right to buy the stock at a certain value. Mm-hmm. And this becomes a derivative based on the existing market conditions or a commodity. So a product issued against something that already has been issued value against.
Okay, and then another point.
Double booking.
Okay, perfect. And the other point I had about creating wealth is, you know, if I go to America and I order a drink, it would be a Coca-Cola, right? A Coca-Cola, let's say, will cost you $1, right? Mm-hmm. And there's more, and that is creating wealth for a country like America. Yes, because like a dollar goes into the system, the economy. If I go to a developing market like Pakistan, I would probably order water, right? Like I would probably have water or tap water, or I would have tap water and I would boil it so that it gets rid of all the bad stuff, and then drink that. Now that water I might only pay 2 cents for, right? But in America, I've drank Coke, but it's actually worse for my health.
Sure.
It's bad for you, and but it's good for the economy. It's good for the wealth creation, right? So that's where I started learning Cokeonomics, or you can talk about like, and there's this nice meme I read somewhere that, for every McDonald's in America, it creates so many jobs, and then it creates jobs, but it also creates doctors, because then people have heart attacks earlier. It creates all this other lifestyle of having a car. Whereas, you know, the worst thing is like if you have, instead of a car, you use a bike, because that bike, you're poorer. If you can afford a car, you're richer, right? And then a bicycle, you're poorer, and you can travel less, but you're working out, but you're actually working out better. And the worst thing is if you just are pedestrian, right? If you have to walk to places now, so like, but actually that's actually better for you. And so what we have to realize is that these are all wealth creating games that are created, right? And America creates, and the finance industry creates so many games that they know how to create wealth for themselves. The reason I wanted to come in as a partner with you on this fintechs.fi was I was like, great, this project, I'm going to learn about finance. And I want to be rich or keep getting richer and richer and richer. It's not that I want a big house and a big car and all this, but I see that money, for me, money allows me to hire more people, create more jobs. It gives me security. Sending my son to a good school, all these other things. Yes, I want the lifestyle, but I'm not driven by yachts. I don't want a private airplane. I'm all these things. But I think that a lot of people, entrepreneurs especially, when they have that money, they use that money investing it into various businesses, which creates more money and more business things. So those are another points to note, that just because there's more money in America, it does not necessarily mean that you're richer, right? Like a lot of people working on Wall Street will earn much more than people in the villages. But, some people are happy to be a shepherd in a remote...
But that's the point. What does it really mean to be rich? I mean, is there a number that makes you rich? Is it something that you can define, or is it a mindset? Because I totally believe that it's a mindset. If in your mind you're rich, then you're already won. You're already there, because everything else will then manifest around you based on how everything is happening inside you. Because obviously everything has to happen inside you before it can happen outside you. It's not just a coincidence that you stumble upon a massive amount of wealth. You need to have a mindset within you first that is driven to go and get it done. And then the manifestation is the outcome. I mean, what do we call it? The inner energy, the drive, whatever we call it. But it's something that has to be within you first. If you don't have it within you, you'll never get there.
And yes, you're completely right. Like I was living in the Middle East well over a decade ago. And I basically lost a really well-paying job. I was making about $15,000 a month after tax, right? So this thing, but like but I was still interested. I remember having like a carpenter that came into my apartment, and he was doing something, and he was like early 40, and I'm like, well, what are you up to this year? And he's like, oh, this is my last year, I'm retiring. I'm like, what? You're retiring? And he was earning $2,000, like less than $1,000, right? And that was like, I felt poor earning 15 times what he did. And he because I was kept investing my money, everything I was doing, I was investing it in businesses, right? Like ideas, trying different ventures out. He was saving all his money and bought a house in the village, right? And just knew that he had enough to live. Like he would just buy a few cows and do that. And I was like, actually, like, people like me or like Elon Musk or these guys, they are constantly thinking about the next thing. But there's so many people in the world that are like, look, I just need $50,000 because I will get me this house and this lifestyle, and that's enough for me. But like entrepreneurs, it's not just about the making money part and being rich. It's about bringing that change in or making an idea come to life. And one of the times that I realized that in wealth creation, creativity is important, because when I was living in the Middle East, I went broke, and like an idea like didn't work out. And basically I didn't have enough money to pay my apartment bill. So I rent, and I was getting kicked out. And so I just had my car, and I got in my car, and I was like, what do I do? Like, I've got no, like, I've lost my apartment. I don't have any place to go. But I had one client, and I was like, he was kind of a friend. And I was like, I called him up and I've said, hey, Isa, like, I just lost my house. And would you mind if I stay with you for a couple of days? And until I sort myself out financially and stuff. And that ended up being for a whole year. And I had food and accommodation and everything paid for by him, right? And I was like, look, we just made a deal that I would be his consultant while for free, like in exchange, you know? So you can be creative around business. So even if you don't have money, like to do a startup, you can say, hey, I'll give you shares in my business, or you'll take a loan, or you can, like, what I've learned is to create wealth is a lot of creativity as well, right?
But wealth creation to me is because I think differently. My approach is different because if you do what you're supposed to do, like we all have our given time of our life, you feel like I'm supposed to do this. This is exactly what I need to be doing. And you've changed your career a few times because you felt like it. I've done exactly the same thing, and we've kind of completed similar circles. That's why we can talk about these things. But to me, the point is that when at any given time of your life, you need to do whatever you feel like you're doing. The other thing that I think differently is that once you do what you're supposed to be doing, the money will come to you. If you try to chase the money, it's just going to go further and further and further, and you never reach it because you're never really focused on anything. You're always just scrambling on the next opportunity that comes to you. But if you stay focused to your cause, and if you keep that cause, the success will come. But you got to keep doing it. I mean, it doesn't happen by accident. The other thing I think is really interesting that I've noticed during my sort of journey is that the more I helped people for free, the more I got in return. And I don't think necessarily that it's because, there's some kind of big magnet in the universe that balances things, or maybe there is. But I think that it's more like, at least that's what I feel like. Somebody does me a favor, I feel like I owe them, and I feel like I have to repay this favor. And because of that, tremendous opportunities have come my way. And it was just, I learned it by accident because I'm too shy to ask for money. So the first person who actually had any influence and needed actually a job to be done, and asked at the end of it, like, so what do you want for it? I said, I don't really want anything. And she said, like, no, you need to have something. So let me at least help you. And then, introduction was made, and that led to something else. But point being is that I always advise, people who ask me about these things, like what to do in order to make opportunities come to you. And I always say, like, don't ask for money, just help. And if you keep helping long enough, eventually someone is going to be like, okay, that's enough. Like, okay, here, I give you a percentage, or I give you a very nice salary, because you never ask for anything. And eventually that will turn around. I mean, it's obviously that you can't necessarily do it forever, but whenever you can, you always should make favors and never ask for anything in return.
Yeah, there's this expression, a lot of people ask for fire before they put in the wood in the oven, right? And so you got to put in this thing. So like people ask me, oh, should I do free internship or work? And I'm like, yes, do it, because you wouldn't get that entrepreneur or that business leader would probably not take you on if they had to pay for you. But as soon as they see value that you're creating, they're going to want to pay you, right? And so I've had people that have started working for me for very minimal payment or even free. And then, like they've 10x their income within a year, because I'm like, I see the value in them, right? So a lot of people start negotiating and haggling and this, but like for guys like me that are hiring, I'll go on to the next person if it's too much of a demand, right? Unless you're really the real talent that goes to like Google or Amazon or these big guys. But you just take the job for free and do introductions for free. And yes, I agree with this, because there's a great book called Influence, Science and Practice by Robert Cialdini, and he talks about the 6 laws of influence. And and one of those laws is called the reciprocity, right? So we as humans want to do good for others. So what happened is he tracked these Hare Krishnas, you know, these guys that wear the orange robes in the airports. And what they used to do is they basically were not making enough donations because they looked weird. They looked like unusual for Americans. And so they weren't getting donations. So they came up with this idea that they would come up to people in the airport and they would give them flowers, right? And the person in the airport would say, no, I don't want it. They'd say, it's for you, it's a gift, it's a flower. So they would take the gift and then they would walk another 10 feet and there would be someone with a bucket saying donations from the Hare Krishna. And because they'd taken a free flower, they would feel obliged to take the gift. And then he even followed them a little bit further and he saw that these people that would then donate the money, they would probably go another 20 feet and throw the flower in the bin. And then these Hare Krishnas would take that same flower out and give it out to people. So like, you know, reciprocity. And this is what I've learned in a lot of cultures, like I'm from Pakistani culture. So for instance, I have an uncle who's a doctor and, you know, I'm sure he has at least like 200 patients that never pay him money because it's like, I'm his brother's son. He has like aunts, whatever. And there's like, it's awkward. So like they don't ask for that money. And so like, even from my book, my first book, Internetism, I generated over $400,000. Now, when I first wrote it, I was like trying to sell it to people like for like $15. And it was really awkward to do because I would meet people at a party or an event and they'd say, what do you do? I'm an author. And by the way, I've got this book. You want to buy it for $15? And it would feel awkward. And then what I found is I had to buy back my rights because my publisher would only give me, like they said you had to sell the book. You have 100 free copies. After that, you have to sell. And that's how we make our money. I had to buy back my rights of the book because what I started doing is giving that book out for free. And then I got many consulting opportunities from that. And that's the thing that like, you know, give out your book, give out your knowledge. Look at what we're doing here with this podcast. We're giving out knowledge, but some of it will help people. And like 99% will be like, okay, great, this is helping me. But there will be a 1% that says, okay, how do I work with these guys? What can we do with fintechs or Amir Anzur or Eetu Kuneinen? And what can we do, right? And so if you don't know what to do to start creating wealth, start creating value. Just create a podcast like this or create a blog or start posting on social media, because over time, some value will be seen and people will start seeing value in this. And
I would extend that. I would say even further, that's exactly one of the things that I think is key to being successful is that any job or anything that you get in life, I mean, you have your current job and your current job is kind of boring. So whatever you do, take the task and think, how can I add value to this so that when I deliver it to my boss, he doesn't have to do as much as he normally would have to. So add value to any little thing that you do in your life, and always think that if you're in the middle piece, what comes before you? Could you maybe make his life easier by saying like, hey, why don't I do that for you? Because that causes, I mean, you have to go to that place, you don't have access. So then you have to go to these 3 people to get access. I already have access, so I can do it for you. So we can save at least 15 minutes in the process by doing it. Try to make every little thing adding value to it, whether it's enhancing the process or giving, I mean, instead of giving to your boss a report that says, you know, like, here are all your options listed, and then nothing. Instead of doing that, say, hey, there are 20 options. I listed you top 5 that I think that would suit you, and I give you my comments on each one of them. I recommend you go with number 3 because yada, yada, yada. Suddenly your boss start to think like, hey, I can do something with this guy or this girl. And suddenly your career start to go on an exponential path compared to just doing the bare minimum, what you always need to do.
Exactly. And because you develop those habits as well, right? Because working becomes a habit, so if you go to a top business school or like any of these top banks, like a Goldman Sachs or Morgan Stanley or any top consulting firm, they will make you work your behind off, right? Like the hours that I put in my early years was phenomenal, right? And then it paid off, because I remember I worked when I joined my career at Accenture. We at that point we used to, if you worked overtime, you would get paid money, right? But then the client, but on one project I worked for, my manager said, look, I don't have budget. You can only charge 10 hours a day. And but like if you work over that, then you can't claim it. But in that project, I was working 14 to 16 hours a day and on the weekends, but I will only charge them 10 hours a day for 5 days a week. And I worked probably double that. And I was never paid for it, but I should have in theory been paid. But I never, like, I just loved the job. I was like passionate about what I was doing for this client. And I thought like that was great. When I came back to the UK, like, 15 years later, I didn't have a job. I was looking for opportunities. I looked up that guy, somehow found him on LinkedIn. And I said, his name was Mark. Mark, I'm in town, just seeing if we could meet up for a coffee. He said, sure, let's meet. And he's like, look, I'm like, look, I'm looking for opportunities. I just moved back to London after traveling many years. And he's like, sure, you can work, meet this person, someone who reported for him. She'll take you on. And basically that gave me a contract for like $1,500 a day for a year. And it was because 15 years later, I had done work for him that he remembered was good. And he's like, that Amir guy is a hardworking guy. And that led to me making, several $100,000 in a consulting capacity. But so you create these assets, right? So if you're in university and you are given a group project to do, if you're the 5 people and if you're the lazy one that doesn't do anything, people might remember that. But if you take leadership or you work your behind off and you do more than your fair share, people will remember that. And they 10 years down the line or 20 years down the line, they'll be like, oh, this Eetu guy was really recommended. He's dependable. And they're going to give you opportunities, right? And just remember that money it's a number in a database. As Warren Buffett says, when you become a billionaire, it's the same hamburger, right? It tastes the same, right? And so this is just a game that humans have created. Your house, it's more to show off to other people that, more than a studio and a wrong thing. It's more to show off to other people that you've got a big house or a big car.
But another thing, very important thing to remember also is that at what point does being rich turn against you? Because there will be a point when people know that you have too much money. It means that you now become a good target for a lot of attacks. Your kids now have to be protected. They have to go to different kind of school. Your life changes. You don't live the free life that you used to. You actually become a prisoner now. You become a prisoner of a privileged life. You cannot go and walk in public. You think Elon Musk can go and walk in public on his own without any security?
Yeah. Mark Zuckerberg with his kids.
Exactly. So suddenly you change the life for yourself and for your family if you reach too high. So the question is, at what point should you be like, okay, now I'm good. I don't need to go further.
This is the challenge that I have, because, and we've talked about this, because I'm like, look, I want to create the Amir and Anzur brand because I want to help change the world, etc. But I've done this before where I've gone on media and TV and all this sort of stuff, and then had many followers. People would come take selfies with me everywhere, and it was getting a bit annoying. And basically, but I'm also on a mission, and I know that in the beginning, I'm helping people create brands. But I get it completely, because yes, like I don't feel as safe in some countries, and doing this, and the security of also thinking about kids and all this sort of stuff, because even in my phone, there's like banking apps and all these things that I'm like, shit, like, excuse my language, I don't mean to compare these, but this, and I have that concern, because I think it was Ronaldo who was like, this football player. He's like, I would love to just go to the shopping mall with my family and just do normal stuff, but you can't. You're in a prison, because like Mark Zuckerberg, he can't go to a normal game. Like he entered a BJJ a tournament, like a karate tournament, and he had to go undercover and hide out all these things, because he had to go with an alias, because he couldn't, like, the next guy, there's so much security involved. So like there's pros and cons, but on the other hand, if you want to change the world, be rich and famous, right? Because if you are rich, yes, you can have an impact, because there are many rich people that maybe not as famous as a politician, but they are the people behind the politician. They give them the money to do their
Rothschilds or the other big families, Rockefellers. You don't see these guys in publicity anymore, but they are the ones who fund all this fun, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, what's better than being the CEO? No, be the guy who controls the CEO.
Yes. I've also learned to not be CEO in my companies. I've assigned other people to be CEOs, and I coach and mentor them, because because if you're the CEO, like, everyone has a different talent, right? And I don't really like running companies. I like starting them. I like the idea, but I want someone else to have that responsibility of profit and loss and cash flow and all these.
Oh, but you wanna have an idea, and then you wanna hire a professional team to run it. That's the idea. You can't be expert in everything. So you get it today, tomorrow you get an idea that you want to build an airline. Do you think you can be the pilot? No, you don't have the skills or the capacity to be the pilot. So do you have an experience of being an airline CEO? No. So you hire an airline CEO, right? So why would you need to push yourself to be something that you're not, even though you just want to be in the business?
Exactly. So going back and summarizing how to be rich, because this is a fascinating topic, and this is something that, people will say, I don't really care about money, but they do care about money to a certain degree, right?
No, but I think it's about financial freedom. You care about financial freedom. You don't necessarily care about money. And actually, I had this conversation earlier today, in a meeting. We talked about, what if you had your wealth in gold, to which you had a debit card to access? So you could basically do a spot conversion from gold to any fiat currency that you use at any given time. But all your wealth would actually be in gold, not in physical gold, tokenized physical gold.
Well, I think you still need a purpose in life, right?
No, but that's a different thing. But my point is that, like we think what wealth is, and then we actually start thinking about my wealth is in dollars. So every year, if I have $1 million in a year, that purchase power of that money is 900,000, and the year after it's 810. You know what I mean? So it goes 10% is about the inflation rate at the moment. So every year, if you keep your money in cash, 10% is gone. So how to get rich is one thing, but everybody dream to get rich, but then when they get rich, they have no idea what to do. And then they lose the money. And so the question is not what to do with the money. The question is how to do things in a certain way. Because if you take from a rich person all his wealth, tomorrow he will have it back, because he will have a way to build it back, because he's done it already once. So he knows how to do it. It's kind of muscle memory thing. You know what I mean? Like success will come to you again once you've had it. So I would say it's more of a pattern of habits that you keep repeating, rather than some one thing that you can define like, this is how you get rich. The other thing is, very importantly, how to define, and you need to define it for yourself. What does it mean to be rich? You are the only one who can tell yourself what does it mean to be rich. No one else can tell you. Because you are the only one who can define what that number is. And then the third concept is financial freedom. So what does it really mean to be financially free? It means you don't have to worry about money every day. So when you go to the supermarket, you look, oh, there's 2 different cheeses. That looks better, but oh, it's a bit more expensive. So I'll take the cheaper one. No, in this case, you take the more expensive one because you have that buffer to do pretty much those whimsical things that you normally wouldn't do. But in this case, you can because you have that
But
fluff.
some people I know that are super rich, multimillionaires.
Yeah.
Because they've created these habits over time, they'll still go for the cheaper cheese because
But that's okay.
Yeah.
But that's fine. But that's because their game is different. Their game is to accumulate money. You're actually about beyond that. You're not thinking about money anymore. You're thinking about the cheese that you want right now because you don't really have to care for it because your trust fund or whatever a portfolio yields for you every month more money than you need, or enough to get by that month comfortably. You don't have to worry about it because it's a set up thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's financial freedom, and then there's financial freedom. So what I'm saying is that like you know, to me, financial freedom means that I don't have to go to work to make money to get by.
Yes, but you know, guys like you and I think we will always be working whatever we're
Of course, but that's a different thing. I choose to work. I retired 4 years ago, and 2 years ago I came back because I was bored.
Yeah.
And also because I had 2 small kids at home. But that had nothing to do with it. I love them to death. They probably will watch this one day. So Evan and Aaron, you guys are the best.
But what I already start getting concerned about, I only have one son who's 6, and I'm like, I know he'll be wealthy by the time he's like 12, right? Like just being able to generate his own wealth, because
Sure.
he will learn like software and all these other things and running a business. But then like, how do I make sure that he keeps having a purpose? But maybe his purpose will be like to be a musician or whatever it is.
But exactly, maybe it's not up to you to decide. Maybe it should be something that he should figure out for himself.
Yeah. And the nice thing is, you know, I live in the UK. Like I had a job at Deloitte, and I was like, you know, an average partner in Deloitte makes $1 million a year, right? And I was like, this is not what's fulfilling me. But what I do is, if what I did was I took a Uber license on the side, right? And to get an Uber license, it's not easy. Like, you have to do various tests and stuff like that. It's not straightforward. But once I got that Uber license, I was like, okay, if I lose my job, I can drive Uber, and then Uber driver can make 3,000 pounds, which let's say about $4,000 a month. So I was like, at least I know I've got this as a fall through, like if business doesn't work. And then also, like in the UK, like, you know, let's say if everything goes haywire and I lose everything, the government will pay for my housing and give me a little bit of pocket money just to survive, right? And I've had that. I have had a business fail and been in like super depression, and the government paid for a flat which was 1.5 kilometers away from the Prime Minister's flat in 10 Downing Street, and it was clean. It was it was a nice flat. I got pocket money from them and from my parents, but like, you know, I got that, and I was just basically so I learned. And then also what they paid for, there's the National Health Service here. They paid for me to see a therapist for a year who would help me get out of my depression, because I was depressed. And I was depressed because I lost my business and I had to lay off people and all these things. And I thought I couldn't make it happen. But then I realized, like, even the worst case scenario in some countries is not as bad when you go broke. Like, maybe next time we'll talk about like how to be broke, which is the opposite of rich. But like, you know, and in other countries, You might not have the government, but you'll have an uncle that'll take care of you, or a mother that you can stay with. You know, a lot of us that have started businesses or went out, chased a dream, have failed, but they've had a friend that's housed us, or our parent that we can stay with, or a government that helps us out.
Oh, it's a rough business. These don't happen on their own, you know, like this is not it's not for sissies, as the saying goes, you know, like being an entrepreneur is probably one of the hardest things you ever, one of the hardest paths you ever choose in life. I remember when I told it to my, he was actually kind of like first boss to me back in the day when I was still actually doing Muay Thai. I was doing training like, you know, 5-6 times a week and working in the evenings. So he when I later on I told him like I'm gonna become an entrepreneur, and he went all like, he was like, oh no, oh no, oh no, no, no. He said this is probably the hardest thing you'll ever do for your life. But if you think you're up for it, he gave me two advice. He said that two pieces of advice. He said, figure out something that you really like. It's really important that you enjoy doing it. And then figure out something that also other people like, so that you might actually have customers while you do it. And I kind of like stick to those two advice for like in everything I do. So I always make sure that those two things check out before I enter any new venture.
Awesome. This has been an awesome conversation as always, Eetu. So we will catch up on fintechs. Check out fintechs.fi. It's got the finance news. You can learn a lot about these types of topics from Eetu, and he's got a team of writers that work and get the best news out to the world. And you know, his passion is teaching people about wealth creation and finance. And so you can go there, learn about crypto, learn about digital banking, and get yourself that dictionary. The other thing that I say in wealth creation is learn the dictionary. You know, what are the words like leverage, wealth creation, assets, liabilities, all these types of terms that will help people. So we will catch you later on amiranzur.com. And also just check out amiranzur.com if you want to create a brand and you know, help build a personal brand and do these type of podcasts where I teach you how to create wealth from your personal brand too. Take care. Bye-bye.